Okay, Nathan. I think we've learned the terms Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. But what do we do with that? What do we do with that now? How do we apply that?
Let's get into that.
Hey guys, I'm Andrea.
I'm Nathan.
And you've joined us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. Family Friday is a time where we get into God's design for family, what the Bible has to say about parenting and family, and how we can apply that to our lives.
That's right. So this month we've been talking about technology. It's such an important tool that we have all around us all the time. I mean, it's how you're watching or listening to this show right now. So certainly there's lots of great opportunity for technology to be used for amazing good, and it is being used for exactly that. But there also is a lot of danger inherent in the technology around us, whether it's, of course, it's not the technology themselves that is dangerous, like it's some amorphous thing plotting against us. It's the people that use the technology to try and infiltrate our families and our kids and lead them, best case, lead them off track of their own accord, or worst case, entice people that use technology to entice our kids into compromising situations. So in the first week, we talked about kind of the medical side of technology and how so much technology can be really detrimental, and even less than you think can be really detrimental, particularly for young children.
Right.
And as a side note, technology in large quantities isn't great if you're a 35 or 45 or 55-year-old child either. So, it's not like we're just focusing on kids, but, this is Family Friday, so the main focus is on how we steward our children and raise them up. Weeks 2 and 3, we had guests on the program. I had my brother Jordan, who's with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and works particularly in the area of cyber crimes with regards to children, right? So we're talking about child pornography, we're talking about cyberbullying, those types of cases that victimize children via technology. And with him was kind of his partner in investigation, Brandon. And the two of them really had some really great stuff to share with you, and were kind enough to come over here and let us pepper them with questions a little bit. So then maybe we take the first few minutes just recapping, what really struck you about the things that they said and how we can implement that as parents into our families or consider implementing it. And then we'll take the next little bit and talk about, what types of things should we be looking at doing as parents,
right?
With regards to our kids. And look, at guys, we don't have all the answers, right? We've tried to always be transparent and upfront with you guys. Our oldest child is 10, right? So you might be looking at going, hey, I've got a 14, 15, 17-year-old, whatever the case may be. And so, you guys don't know a thing about fighting the technology battle, having the oldest who's 10. And well, I'll grant you that point, that maybe I don't have the same battle right in front of me that you have. I think we've tried to always approach these things from a 10,000-foot view standpoint, and consider them, from the standpoint of what does the Bible say about what it means to parent our kids, and then let's take a look at how we can apply those things to our family. And that doesn't matter, I don't have to have every person's situation in mind in order to be able to say, hey, I really think you should consider this as a parent. And that's what we want to try and do today, is just think about, okay, how do we practically put that into place in our families? So before we get into that, go ahead.
Well, the Bible's pretty clear that as Christians we're to be countercultural. And that means that a lot of times, or sometimes, or whatever, that we're doing the weird things.
Yeah.
Weird maybe in the world's eyes, and that's
not just for the sake of being weird, but because it's right.
Not for the sake of being weird, but because what's countercultural is really the right thing to do. And so it can be hard and I struggle with this as a parent, thinking about, especially with technology, thinking about, gosh, that's gonna separate our kids so much from their peers in certain areas, and that's gonna really, they're really gonna be different in that area. And I just think, that's okay for us. That's what we're called to, and this is an area that we want to be so careful in.
Right.
And so being countercultural is really going to make us look very different than other people in this area, and I'm just okay with that.
Right. So let's get into that more here in a minute. But before we do, to kind of put a bow on having Jordan and Brandon over the last couple of weeks, what were some things as you walked away from that conversation that you were thinking
that really
about?
Resonated with me? One thing that it didn't even have anything to do with technology that we have started implementing, not every day, but frequently, is something Brandon said. And he was talking about when he and his family come home, they're all together, home from school, jobs and all that. They spend the first 15 minutes or whatever he said doing a family activity. Yeah. And he said it sounded like they do a lot of coloring together. Yeah. Just kind of to get a reset on, we're a family unit, we're going to just take a little downtime to be together, whatever. And Nathan and I talked about that, and again, it has nothing to do with technology, but just a really good nugget that we took away that's like, yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Just to be able to, when Nathan comes home from work, that introduction back into the home for him can feel a little bit like, well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know
what kind of a day we had.
Yeah, what kind of a day we've had. I don't know what the ins and outs of everything. And Andrea's been the person, the director of the home all day, and now I'm coming in and I'm co-director, whatever. So, and I sometimes feel like that's an awkward transition too, to all of a sudden Nathan's coming into everything that's going on. Yeah. And, in that moment. So, we thought, gosh, that sounds like a really great idea, just to be able to get together as a whole family, do something together, just to kind of, I don't know, have a few minutes to all be together and working on the same thing. So like one day we started building a fort together. One day I think we just kind of sat around and talked a little bit for a few minutes, but there's tons of ideas. I mean, we could shoot hoops together for 15 minutes, or like Brandon does, color together, or play a game together, or whatever. Just something that you're doing as family. So I love that idea, and that's something that we took away and we've really enjoyed doing.
That's great.
So something else that resonated with me, I just had it on the tip of my head. With technology and like feeling like I can never really keep up with my kid. My kid is always ahead of me in technology, which is probably true and probably going to be the case forever. The next generation is always going to be learning at a higher rate, doing things better, all that with technology. It just is the way it is. I loved what they had to say, like with sit down with your child and have them show you what this app is, or do the thing together. It doesn't always have to be, oh, I don't really know what this is, or I don't get it, or whatever. Like, enter your child's world in that and say, hey, show me how this works, or show me what you're doing on this, or whatever. Maybe even fake some interest in the things that they're interested in. Just so that you are learning, but you're also kind of entering their interests.
Yeah, for sure.
And anyway, so I really liked that point. And technology not always being, especially for the young kids, not always being a, hey, yeah, here you go. You do this, now let me do my thing. But and really a world that you're kind of doing together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that really I felt a lot on. Tell me something that's resonated with you.
Well, first of all, like before we go any further, I think we have to address the elephant in the room with regards to having Brandon and Jordan here. And that's that Brandon looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed this at home. It was way worse in person.
It was.
Like, I felt like I was interviewing Jordan and Van Wilder.
That's funny. So,
with regards to technology.
We, of course, know Jordan, but
Right.
we have known of Brandon,
Right.
but we've never met him in person. And when I met him at our house that day, I had to zip my lips really hard because I really wanted to say, "Oh my gosh, you look so much like Ryan Reynolds."
And his mannerisms and all that too are like, I don't
Yes.
know. That's something. Somebody needs to get in touch with Ryan Reynolds. When you watch this, call me because I need to introduce you to your doppelganger.
Yeah, totally.
That was crazy.
It was.
And
if
I
you're
didn't want to make a
listening
big
to
deal.
this podcast, you should look at the YouTube videos of weeks 2 and 3 of this month because it is shocking.
Right? Yeah, he is. He is. He's like a buffer Ryan Reynolds, which was great. And several people have said that, so that's why I wanted to say something. And I know he gets that all the time, so I don't want to make a big deal about it.
Sorry, Brandon.
Because that wasn't really, the purpose of them being here. But now I'll talk about him behind his back, so that's good. So anyway, joking aside, the couple of things that really stood out to me were, and you hit on the one about sitting down with your kids and. Goodness.
You need more caffeine.
No kidding.
More caffeine.
And taking an interest in the apps that they're doing, and rather than trying to figure it out on your own or sneak around behind their back and creep on them on their social media apps, asking them, particularly at a young age, because it's certainly not impossible, but certainly is more difficult if you start trying to do this, in the later years of adolescence, but. Particularly if your kids are young, having them start include you in hey, I'm interested in, what you're doing. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting was that, that I felt like Brandon and Jordan were super clear that there is no or very few safe spaces when it comes to online connected devices. I mean, there's no just playing games or, just on social media or whatever. It doesn't matter what the thing is. We need to be cognizant of the reality that there are dangers out there. And I thought they did a really good job of describing that those last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I thought that was good. And then I thought the little bit of discussion on a child's quote-unquote right to privacy with regards to their devices and making sure that that's super clear to our kids that that's not a thing. That when you're in my home, this is, I have every right to see everything you're doing and look into that. I thought that was important. And then, the last thing for me was I felt like both Jordan and Brandon did a good job of just highlighting the reality that we have a responsibility now, unfortunately, in today's age, to be talking with our kids about things like sexting and cyberbullying and those types of things at a young age.
Right.
And you can go back and listen to those couple of episodes, because when I say young age, you might be thinking 5. Right? I'm not talking about that young of an age. But the reality of the matter is, average age when kids are exposed to pornography at this point is what? 10?
10 or 11. Somewhere around 11, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly we need to be preparing our kids with what that is and what that means and what do you do if you're exposed to this and who can you talk to, and try and, cut off that foothold that Satan can get from young people being exposed to pornography at a young age. So.
Something I've really struggled with since having them here is I felt like both of their attitudes were kind of piggybacking off of what you said. We're kind of like, your kid is going to come across stuff that you'd never want them to see,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna have to be prepared for that.
Yep.
And maybe they didn't say that point blank, but I feel like I've wrestled with, I think that's what they were, I think that's inherent in some of the things that they were saying, is your child is going to, if they're on the internet at all, you know, over the length of their growing up years,
Yep.
they're going to be exposed to things that you would never want them to be exposed to. And it's so important to keep that line of communication open, and it's important to try to be, you know, careful in understanding what they are exposed to and interacting with, and that sort of thing. And I've really wrestled with that a lot, because it is probably reality that they're going to, and especially with 4 kids, you know, the likelihood of at least one coming across things that break my heart to think of is the reality. And so what am I going to do to help prepare my kids to deal with those sorts of things, you know, and to create to pray into and help and help to create an atmosphere where it's open dialogue, you know.
This reminds me of a child psychologist that you and I had the opportunity to speak with probably 5 or 6 years ago. And, you know, so that's 2014 or 15. And at the time, she said, she was talking a little bit about kind of this issue. And she was saying, you know, even 10 or 20 years before that, so 1995 to 2005, she said, if a child talked about or made reference to oral sex, that there was like an greater than 90% chance that they had been sexually abused by someone, right? So if a child,
20, 25 years ago.
Right, so if a child, you know, 4, 5, 6-year-old makes reference to oral sex either by role-playing that out in playtime or by talking about it or something like that, then from, you know, 95 to 2005 and before, there was like over a 90% chance they'd been sexually abused. She said from 2005 to 2014 or 15, whenever we were having this conversation with her, that percentage had gone down by like 60%.
Drastically.
And you hear that and you go, well, how does that go from over 90% to like 30%? So almost a certainty a child that talks about or makes reference to oral sex has been sexually abused, to probably not very likely that they've been sexually abused, but should explore that further with that child. Mm-hmm. How does that happen in the course of 10 years? And what she said is television. And we're not talking about social media. I mean, this is 2005 when this started changing, right? There wasn't iPhones. There wasn't all of these internet-connected devices just yet to the extent there is now. And so what she said is that these television commercials where 2 people are making out and then, you know, the woman's head disappears or whatever, like, kids aren't stupid even at that age. Like, they can figure those types of things out. And she said, you know, commercials that insinuate sexual activity, or obviously movies and all the rest that insinuate the same, kids pick up on that. Mm-hmm. And that was resulting in this huge decrease.
I know. That's crazy. And that's just a commercial that something is insinuated,
right? You
know, and they can figure it out. But yeah, just knowing our kids are probably going to come across things that break my heart, and trying now to set the stage for open dialogue, for helping them as much as possible to understand that and want to talk about that and process that, you know, is important. Yeah, so I think that was something that was really surprising to me. That it's like, I mean, not surprising, but kind of, yes, I know that it's out there and it's probably going to make its way through.
Yeah.
But it was, I don't know, it was hard for me to hear the certainty of it.
Yeah, you kind of hope that like they're going to offer you this ray of sunshine, and I think they're just speaking. Hey, here's the reality of the matter, which really leads us to what I want to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes talking about, which is, so what do we take away from that? I mean, what do we need to be thinking about as parents as we think about raising our kids? Because I gotta be honest, guys, over the last 30 days since we started, not quite 30 days since we've started this series, I've gotten feedback from everything from people that weren't even able to finish both of the 2 episodes from Jordan and Brandon because it was hard to hear, to people that think you and I are living with our head under a rock, to people that think that we're just showing that we don't have teenagers yet, that we're even talking about these types of things. So how do we look at this with regards to our family, and how can we recommend to the folks at home that they think about it themselves?
I think the way we look at it, we have a different perspective.
Which is what?
I think we have a different perspective largely because we have Jordan in our family. And so we hear a lot about the really awful things that can happen. And so, when you have that all that knowledge, you can't live life like with your head in the sand on it all. Yeah. We obviously in this podcast didn't get into the nitty gritty, but you guys, for us, we can't just say, oh, well, hopefully everything's okay, and we're just gonna give our kids free access to everything, So for us, we talked a little bit about really trying to rein in our kids, choosing to rein in our kids' access currently to the internet. And that's easy for us because they're so young. They don't have a lot of access to it if it's not for us giving it to them. They don't have a lot of freedom in that way. But then beyond that, we just choose to also really limit screen time. And we've seen a lot of positives to that. It can also be hard too. If we were to give our kids a lot of screen time, that would make our lives so much easier, right? Our house would be so much cleaner. And I talked about this on episode 1 of this month. I can see a lot of benefits to that for us, but that's not really what's beneficial for the children. And so choosing to really forego a lot of that time and sometimes grading that out is what's better for family and kids and development and all that kind of thing. So practically for us, we do a movie night a week and sprinklings of some screen time here and there, but
Jackson has opportunity to earn some video game time.
Yeah, our 10-year-old has an opportunity to earn video game time, but he doesn't do it very often,
Which we're okay with.
Right, he gets currently he gets 0 minutes a week doing video game time, and that's been that way for a long time. But he's able to, and then I would say, we definitely keep under the 30 minutes a day. But our kids probably watch 2 hours of screen time, or do 2 hours of screen time a week. And what we see with that too is our kids aren't used to the screen, so their imaginations are really great. They have these wild imaginations and they play a lot. They interact with each other a lot because they're each other's playmates. So
it can be good and bad.
It can be good and bad. There can be some really hard fights here, but there's also a lot of really great playtime, and that's playtime with 10, 5, and 3.
Right.
And they do play together often.
Right.
And they play well together often, and they also fight some of that time too. But it's really cool because I think having less screen time has made them more have more vivid imaginations and required them to form closer bonds. Yeah, what else?
Guys, for me, I think the question you need to wrestle with is, I hope what you're hearing as Andrea describes kind of how we handle this is, we've tried really hard to be intentional with the way that we parent in this area.
Sure.
And we don't do that necessarily in every area. There's certainly areas in our parenting that we should shore up the intentionality of how we handle that. Mm-hmm. But in this particular thing, we feel like it's so important because at the end of the day, the innocence of a child is a very precious thing.
Yeah.
And it's something that once you break that vase, you can never unbreak it. And so protecting the innocence of our children for as long into their life as possible, I think is important. And you might be listening to this going, well, you're going to have a 20-year-old that, doesn't, know what sex is. Well, no, but that's because we aren't shielding our children from going out and having friends and doing those kinds of things. We're just trying to protect an outside force from coming in and wrecking their innocence for as long as we can. Right. And it's why we try to be so intentional about protecting in that area. And, again, to people that listen to this and go, well, you don't really know anything because once your kid's a teenager, they're going to hate you if you do this. To which I would respond and say, well, yeah, this is not, the teenage with the cell phone thing is not something a battle we're fighting right now. But if you've listened to us over the last few months, we have a policy that our kids do not spend the night at other people's house. For a lot the same reason that we're so intentional about technology. And that is a big battle for a 5 and 10-year-old. And it's something we've never compromised on. There's never been any discussion about it. Jackson's now old enough that we've talked with him about what sex is and why we're so protective of them. And so he has a little bit more understanding of why we don't allow these things. And so for him, it's well, this just is. So it doesn't really do me any good to fight and argue about it because this is what it is.
Right.
And so, go ahead.
And as they get to be teenagers overnights is easy to be you just can't have overnights, period. You can't have one on the down low, we know. But with technology, they can, when they get to be an age where there's a lot more freedom, heck yeah, they're going to have a lot more freedom to access things that we don't want them to access and be on their friends' stuff and do things and lie about it and all that. And we know that. We totally get it. That's pretty common for teenagers to be rebellious and we pray against that. But we also know that may be something that our kids choose, and they'll at least have the foundation to know why we choose to try to protect them from that, why we want them to not do it, and that's between them and the Lord then. And right. I hope that they talk to us about that. I hope that they get found out, and I pray they get found out. But if they don't, that's something that's a choice that they've made then.
Right.
And that's between them and God. And I can't protect them from everything all the time. That's just part of raising children. You have to... Right. You can't have control over them all the time.
Right.
And so then my trust in the Lord hopefully deepens, because that's God's child.
Right.
Ultimately. And they're responsible ultimately to the Lord.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's completely right. If you're listening to this and maybe you have older kids and you've not instilled any of this discipline and you're going, well, I don't know how to start that now. What I would say is spend some time, you and your spouse, praying into that and see what the Lord would suggest to you with regards to how to handle these issues, because I can understand, here's what I would say. Think about really, why is it that with older kids now you don't want to implement these things? Is it because you feel like it's unfair to your kids that you never have had these rules in place and now you're trying to put them in place? Maybe that's something to work through with the Lord. What I would say is, if it's fear that your kids are going to dislike you as a person because you're putting this structure in place in their lives, that I would say, take that fear before the Lord, but understand, our relationship with the Lord, our faith is not a faith of fear. It's one of boldness and courage. And as a practical matter, you can't live your life in fear that your kids won't like you, because that's a roller coaster you never get off. And if you're afraid my kids, if I take their phone privileges away or I put structure in place with regards to their phone, they're going to hate me. What happens when they want to move in with their girlfriend? What happens when they want to stay the night at their girlfriend's house? What happens when they want to do this thing that you don't approve of, and this thing you don't approve of, and this thing that's a sinful behavior that you need to bring discipline in? How do you ever stop that? Because you're always going to come back to this spirit of, well, I would prefer if they didn't do that, but if I call them out on that, they're not going to like me anymore. So I would just, again, you're welcome to check back with me in 6, 7, 8 years and see if I'm walking in a spirit of this, and Lord willing, we'll still be doing this, and I may be sharing, hey, I'm really struggling in this area because Jackson doesn't like me right now. But in that moment, the right thing still is that I can't walk in fear of that, because my job as a parent is to bring structure to his life and discipline in a way that allows him to, one, enter into a faith relationship with Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and two, disciple him in growing in that faith so that the Lord can use his life to God's greatest glory, however he's designed that to be. And fear just really has no place in that. Yeah.
And another fear maybe, well, my kid's not going to be, they're not going to know how to use technology. Well, there's nothing saying they can't use it.
Sure.
They will.
Jackson's used a smartphone. In fact, he's probably better with my smartphone than I am.
Right. We just sit next to him when he does.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There was something that I was just thinking. I hate when that happens.
Just as a side note with regards to kids using technology, the old saying, you can't buy a car unless you've test driven it. Well, that has a lot of applications in life. So let's not start going down that road with regards to technology.
Sure. The thing I was going to say is, yes, with technology, we are strict and we will be strict. And there are certain, and with like spend the night, we've said we're strict about that. Our kids aren't going to spend the night at other people's houses. But we do try to, and I feel like we are always trying to grow in this, be pretty lenient in a lot of other areas. Because we know that our parenting can be really strict in certain areas, that we try to say yes a lot in other areas. And try to really be lenient in other areas. I mean, tonight's an example. We let our 5-year-old and our 10-year-old stay up till past 10 o'clock. It's a school night. Our son has one of his school days tomorrow. We let them stay up past 10 o'clock, which is really late for them, just because,
And we hung out and
because
did
they wanted
as a family.
to. Because they wanted to. We hung out. Yeah, we played a little bit of a game. They asked to, and so we were like, yeah, sure, whatever. And that's a small example, but we do try to be pretty lenient with a lot of other things because we know that we're really strict in some certain ways, in certain ways. And we try to give our kids, if you're strict in every way, then your kids are just going to have a tendency to be just bitter and rebellious,
Yeah, that's fair.
And so, yeah, we have these areas that we try to explain to them why, and then hopefully give them a lot of freedom in a lot of other places.
Yeah. So one way where you can do this with technology, and I don't probably know the best about the latest, greatest programs for this, but I know there are a ton of programs that they don't necessarily limit the sites that you can go to, and again, this would be probably more for older kids, but they log everywhere you've been.
Right.
And particularly flag apps and or websites that are questionable.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can be sent to whomever, right, by email. And I've used these programs before. I have guys in my life who have used it, and I was the person that they designated to get the report. And, you get daily or weekly or a monthly or whatever frequency you set up, you get an email that lists all the things that this person's been up to. And if you feel like, hey, it's too much to, completely say technology off limit in your room or, when we're not around or whatever, then this may be an alternative. Of course, always be aware that, as they say, the criminals are always ahead of the cops. Not that your kids are criminals, but the people can always find ways around these things. But that may be an alternative to be able to say, hey, we're going to do this. Dad and mom are doing it on our phones. And the cool thing is you can have that report sent to, someone else, right? I mean, if there's someone, maybe a youth pastor or a leader at your church that your kids connect with, and you wanted to have that sent to them, so that it's not going to mom and dad, and then your kids, and again, this is really talking about probably older teens, someone that they can connect with, and be able to talk about, hey, I saw you went to these sites, or you're using these apps. What were you up to on there? What were you doing? And hold them accountable.
I'm trying to find this. There's a phone that's been suggested. We'll put it in the links.
Okay.
That's, I think it just texts and calls, which is an option for maybe younger kids.
Yeah, that are mobile.
Yeah, hey, we want you to have a way to get a hold of us and a way to communicate with us, but not have the whole smartphone thing.
Sure.
We'll put that in the. I was trying to find it, but I don't think I can.
That's all right.
Put that in the links.
Cool.
For something to
Let's
look into.
All right. Cool. So, babe, wrap it up. What's kind of the final word?
Be intentional. I mean, I feel like that's our word a lot, but
I agree.
But be intentional with your family and technology, particularly your kids, and talk about it. Giving these rules and guidelines and not giving them some reasons as to why, age appropriately, talking to them about reasons why you choose to do that.
Yep.
All that's great.
It's good. Yeah, for me, I would say, as parents, we have to choose those hills that we die on, right? Those non-negotiable things. As you mentioned earlier, everything can't be that, but there are things that need to be that. And for us, part of the reason we had Jordan and Brandon in for 2 weeks, part of the reason we've tried to really be upfront with these things is I believe that this is a hill in 2020 that we need to be willing to die on as parents. Mm-hmm. Because the stakes are high, they're long-lasting for the entirety of our kids' lives, and it is critically important that we really go to bat for our kids, and that means embracing conflict with them sometimes. So I hope this has given you guys something to think about as a couple. I hope you intentionally spend some time together thinking about these things, evaluating what you do as a family, what you are going to do if you have a young family, or changes that you can make if you have a mature family. So anyway, let us know down in the comments below what you've thought. Love any additional questions that you have for Brandon or Jordan or for us. let us know. We'll make sure to get answers for you. Thanks, guys, for joining us. And remember, God is for your family. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.